Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are honored to have Paula Howell joining us again here, not just on the podcast, but the Zoomcast too. She's our educational counselor at Howell Academics, based out of Vancouver, British Columbia, but she's helping people all over from preschool, kindergarten to middle, upper school, you name it, helping you really on your educational journey worldwide. So welcome to the show today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having us back. So thank you so much.
Pleasure to see you. And just before we start, let's tell everyone how we can contact you.
Okay, well, you can contact me directly through email at paulahowell@howellacademics.com. But you can also give us a look up on howellacademics.com, our website as well.
Perfect. Well, excited to have you back here to talk more about how you're helping so many excel with their education and elevate their business. And just a little bit of your background. You have many years of educational expertise under your belt. Would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I think it's interesting because, I have a background in education, but also in business. But I think what's humbled me the most is just being a parent myself in this role. So I had my daughter at 38, but I started in education at 17. And I thought I was an expert until I had my daughter. So I do still consider myself an expert, but in saying that, a more humbled one with more realistic kind of outline. So my background stems from early childhood education to also a degree in education, also human behavior, child psychology, even right down to family mediation, as well as human development and HR. So it's kind of that symbiotic kind of circle that makes me more informed. I'm also a coach and finalizing my master's as well in counseling psychology.
Beautiful. Well, we're excited that you're back here joining us today and to talk more about the process and again, all the work that you do. So at Howell Academics, where did you want to start about the children, the people you're helping? And it's worldwide. There's ready programs, there's the private school admission. To explain it to us. Thank you.
Well, I think it goes full circle. Right now we're in the heart of the admission season right now where parents are gearing up to either consider applying for 2025 September start, or they have decided we're going to go for that private school process. And parents are either on two fences where they kind of have a plethora of information or they're not sure where to start. So right now it's really about helping them discover that landscape and work them through. So for Vancouver currently right now, and also in anywhere in North America, most of the admissions applications are due before the end of this year, where parents are looking at parent statements, how to prepare, what to add to their application. And that tends to bring up a lot of anxiety about what do we add, what don't we add? Is my child going to be ready for the admissions process?
Oh, my goodness, that's always a struggle. But you have a daughter?
I have a daughter, Paige.
How old is she?
8.
Got it. Okay, yeah, that's right. Because mine are 7 and 9, two boys, but I get it right in between. And there's so much that goes into this. And, it's unfortunate that I was never taught the importance of education. I was the first in my family to go to college, even though my sister, my brother didn't do it, and now it's like I'm trying to pass that example on to my kids. And this is amazing because you're helping so many because education is key. So go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're never interrupting. I like to have a dialogue. I think I really like your energy as well. So it's really nice to actually see and feel you here today.
I know.
It's easier to have that conversation. But, I think sometimes there's an idea of, I remember my father always said to me that, you don't go to university or you don't go to college because you want to be something. You go because you're interested in something. And if you haven't formulated what that interest is, there's no point in going because it doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a job. Right. So there's many people who graduate from many different genres of professions, but it doesn't mean that they actually are working within it. So what I always say to families is that may be like a fundamental goal that you may have for your child, but it's the steps that leading up to it will help them cement exactly what they will want to do. And the goal is hopefully that they do something that they're interested in. I just had my 46th birthday and I had to pinch myself and go, really? Am I 46? When did that happen? And, and dropping off my daughter who's 8 to school. And we talked a little bit about the ant theory last time we were here, but it was interesting just really thinking about that idea. There's tons of traffic right now because they're doing a whole development. So my once 18-minute commute has now moved to an hour and a half, and I'm sitting in traffic. And as I'm sitting there, I'm going, at least I love my job. I can imagine what it must be like if somebody's doing that every single day and they don't enjoy their job. So,
Yep.
really anchoring for our children the importance of discovering, finding, really knowing what you want to do. So, do you love your job right now, what you're doing? Right?
Yes, I
Um,
totally do. I love talking to people. It's just something that comes natural to me. I don't consider it a job. That's how much I
exactly,
love what I do. So
exactly.
I'm very lucky that I found, this career and talking and podcasting and television. It's just great. Yes.
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? And it doesn't matter. Like I would say that all my education, all the things that I've done, they've added to my knowledge base to how to make more
hmm
informed decisions. But it really is the life experiences that I've had, the experience that I've gone through, both socially, emotionally, physically, that have really kind of made it all come together. So it's really just looking at that and thinking to yourself, what do I want to project to my
Yeah.
child? And am I projecting old values and ideas of you must go to school, you must get straight A's
Yeah.
in order to be a success? Or am I saying that if you find something you're passionate about, it becomes easier and you are more willing to want to learn about that. And that result is straight A's,
Yeah.
or that result is that because you have a personal commitment.
It's so true. And you were
Mhm.
just talking about, you mentioned New York before we talked off of the top, right? What were you saying about New York?
Well, it's interesting because New York has one of the highest, most competitive private school admissions platforms, where parents are vying for spaces even as early as pre-kindergarten and kindergarten,
Yeah.
and they're trying to get into the most coveted schools, and it is extremely competitive. And I know what it feels like, and you with two boys as well must know what it feels like to want to
hmm
do the best while keeping up with the Jones, while people telling you it doesn't matter about competition, it doesn't matter where your kids are. But ultimately, we do live in a competitive environment where we're comparing every single thing that happens, whether it's a really great red apple or it's a dull, dry one, right? Like we're
Yep.
constantly comparing them. So to leave that out of the equation isn't a fair analysis. So I think it's really about, there's 1,001 different white t-shirts, but we pick ones that we are called to, whether it's a brand, an idea, or a theory.
Yep.
And it's the same thing with children, is that when a school, which is an entity, is looking at families or children, they're looking at you as a brand. They're looking at you as, do you fit within their brand, right? And what is your brand? And it's okay if that brand doesn't fit that school, if you're
Yep.
authentically showing up with who you are and you're presenting it. Because throughout the process, the goal is that you learn whether or not that brand is for you. And you learn the skills through programs that we offer as well to help design your brand so you know really authentically who you are. And if you go there speaking in that language and being within that frame and they don't accept you, then you can
Yep.
walk away going, I'm okay with that, because obviously this wasn't a good match for me, for them, and us. So it's an equal balance.
Beautiful. I love it because, yeah, this is the time. I have my niece who's 13. She's talking about colleges. My neighbor across the street, she's 15. She's already getting looked at with
Yeah.
sports, and
Yeah.
it is competitive. And even with sports, it's like, it does matter. Yeah, we do live in a competitive society, even though we say, oh, we shouldn't compete, we shouldn't. You have to. It's part of the survival of the fittest. And
Yeah.
education is so important to us, being so whole and well-rounded and for the rest of our lives. So we got to instill it in them now. And they're still, I have my master's, but I wish I got my doctorate. I'm like, and I'm your age, right? We're 46,
Yeah.
but I'm like, no, I'm like, I'm too old, but maybe I'm not, like, I just wish I did
Yeah.
everything a little earlier,
I don't know, like I'm kind of at that, I hear and I feel that. And at the same token, I've let go of the idea of having to have the achievement wall. I always call it my paper wall. Like I've let it go now because I'm studying the master's, because when I had my daughter, I had started it before I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. She was a
hmm
beautiful surprise. And when we found out about her, it was like I made the decision to really just focus on, trying to create a foundation, a family, all of those things, that I
Yeah.
paused my educational. And I've never not finished anything in my life. So for me, going back to finishing my master's was more of a commitment to self to finish what I start. And now in reviewing it, 6 years later from when I originally started it, it's a complete new way in which I look through and look at it,
Yeah.
right? How many friends do you know that have gone to university or college 20, 30 years ago And if they were to do the same course now, it'd probably fail, right? Or they would have no sort of the idea of actually sitting and doing the homework. So I really think it's your stage in time. Nothing's stopping you from researching something, and you just don't get the paper on the wall, right? It's not going to change probably what you do.
Yeah.
Love what you do, but it's really our perception of what that paper means. And my goal when I work with families is really to kind of look at what is your meaning behind why you want something. Why do you really want your child to go there? And it's really interesting because, I had a great family just yesterday who they went to elitist universities, and they were writing on their application. They didn't apply with me the first time. This was their second time coming from a different firm. And they were writing on their application that they really just cared about, earthy, lifey kind of things, and having more of a new age style of parenting. And it was interesting because their children were applying for kindergarten in grade 1, and their children had not even gone to formal kindergarten or preschool or anything.
Wow.
And it didn't make sense because I said to them, on paper, you have to look at it from how the admissions team is looking at it. You're applying to very holistic schools, but they're still private schools. Both yourself and your husband went to elite universities in the United States. And you're coming here right now telling me that you're airy-fairy and that you don't care about education, that you just really want things to flow, right? And I said, how does that look to them? All they're seeing is, are you trying to fit within their frame, and are you being authentic?
Wow.
So what's the story that you're really trying to tell? What has led you to this transition of wanting more of a different life for your child? What has led you to that? And nothing in the application, all the classes they've taken, all of those things don't communicate the message that you're trying to share, right? So it's really breaking down like the whys from the heart, and not necessarily what we think the perception of success is.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so thanks. It's a big picture. So yeah, I really, really enjoy learning about people's stories, right? Like what has things.
And then how do you coach them into doing the right thing?
I think that's where I think it's never about me. I think the wonderful, beautiful thing about when I first started learning to be a coach, it was because I had started the master's pass, and I decided, okay, I want to go through and understand the whole life coaching thing. But life coaching had these very weird paradoxes where people were like, oh, a life coach, what do they do? Right? There's so many variants of that. And quite frankly, I thought, sure, I thought it would be, I had my daughter, and I thought this would be great because the credits that you get from taking life coaching will help with credits that you need for your master's. So I thought this is a win-win, right? But I could not believe how much I learned from that. And what was interesting about it is the hierarchy of it. So it goes like, somebody sees a psychologist, you learn the theory behind your issues or problems. Then you see a counselor who helps you talk and walk through them. And then a life coach gives you active ways to walk within what you've learned. So it's kind of like a 3-tier process. So when clients come to me, like this family that I was speaking of, it's not really about me telling them what to do. It's me providing the right questions to get them to come to their own realizations. So it's looking at, well, how was your education when you were a child? What did you experience when you were a child? Did you like what you were doing? Were your parents very strict? What did you feel like when they were strict? When you failed at something, what happened? What was the
consequences?
The consequences are what usually stand out, right? And from those consequences, I usually find the answers, and I hold them and see if we're in parallel. So for this family, it was all about, rigor and strength and stability. And in our conversation, just about 3 months ago, the father had died, and that was very catastrophic. And it did plague a lot of the reason why their youngest hadn't gone to preschool, which was never mentioned, right? And the father had left a very strong legacy, a financial legacy, now that the father was responsible for taking care of. Now, that cemented the idea of him having the strong academic background to be able to do that, but also the sense of pressure that comes with that, right? His wife has a very strong academic background, ended up being a feng shui specialist, which I thought was really interesting because the two united, right? You've got the mirrors of personalities, busy, and then feng shui. And I said, so if you look at that and you look at those elements, you attracted each other because one was very rigorous, one is now calm, and you're balancing. And now you have these two beautiful children that you just want them to discover within an environment that still gives opportunity. But it's important to highlight where that root started and framed. And if you give that story, it's completely authentic to you, as opposed to cutting and pasting concepts from the website. And no matter who they speak with, when they make it to the interview round, there'll be unique questions and connection that are established that nobody else can establish, because the person that's interviewing you has their own life, and their job is their role, but it's not who they are. So it's important to be able to connect with them with something that's relatable.
I love it. Let's remind everyone at this time, Paula, how we can contact you again.
So it's Paula Howell at Howell Academics with an S .com. And you can also directly telephone our office on 778-628-0204, or look us up on the website at howellacademics.com.
And there's still that discount, right, by September 30th?
Yeah, we're
sign
still
up for
offering, we're still offering the discount $100. But we've also, we also decided that what we'd like to give to our families right now, after just feedback, because we're constantly evaluating our feedback, is, they also want access to looking at everyday activities. So our Ready Hub, we've now combined it with the actual admission strategy success. So you now get both of those together, and we're doing it at a one rate until December. So that will be available for families to be able to purchase.
Wonderful. Well, this is the time of year, right? Well, we're in fall. How does it work in the school world, right? I mean, this is back to school, so this must be your busy season.
This is my busy season, like the tax agents, right? Like I'm here 24/7. I'm working 24/7 applications and writing. I do still write in the world of ChatGPT. I still do write. I still do authentically tell a story, because we all have nuances of language in which we use. And it's when we are interviewing with leadership that they are able to pick out, because somebody might say, I really enjoy something, but ChatGPT may say that was delightful. You're able to pick up on those nuances, right? So it's really, really important that you authentically write your statement. And in that, it will shine more than any other one that can be digitally designed.
Beautiful. What else do you want us to know about your advocacy, your coaching, your admissions, and all the people you're helping? And by the way, it's from pre-K to how old? I mean,
pre-K to university. We scaffold depending. Most of my clients that I've worked with in the junior years or middle school years always utilize my services all the way through to university. So for me, I don't pitch a lot of what we do. It's really an organic process. So, the scope in which I can work with families goes many directions. And the biggest thing is to have a discovery call, to sign up for a discovery call, which we offer complimentary, or I offer complimentary. It's funny how I've always said we in context, but the firm itself is, I'm the main person, and I have myself, my assistants who help with things like scheduling and organizing, because that is not something I enjoy. So I have learned to understand that part. But the biggest thing is really just a discovery call. We offer numerous amounts of services to help families full circle. And that's a milestone, right? Many different milestones that occur through that.
And, you're based out of Canada, but you are worldwide, right?
Yes, so I was born in California originally. So California originally, and then moved to Ontario, and then lived in Australia for 10 years, and then found myself here to help with the readiness program in Vancouver in 2009, because Vancouver had just actually became an accredited kindergarten in 2011. So we didn't have kindergarten as a mandatory study until 2011. Yeah, crazy, right? So very, very different.
Wow. And just curious, in Canada, what is the system like? I mean, if you have public schools, private schools, the same thing as the US?
Same thing, same thing. So it's just as similar. I would say that the only difference is, I would say that it depends what province you're in, but if I'm speaking just for our province of Vancouver right now, is that dependent on where you are, your geographical area is where you would be able to apply for a public school. Whereas a private school, you can be anywhere and apply for that private school if you're willing to so-called drive, but they don't necessarily accept you if you're 3 hours away, right? But our private schools are much smaller than that of the US. So, we have private schools that have, only 3 classrooms, which only accompanies altogether 70 children. So the competitive mark is so much higher. So you're looking at, classrooms of only 17, 20, 21 students and 400, 500 applicants and only 3 new spaces this year, right? So it's a very competitive process. For the last, 8, 9 years, knock on wood, I've had like a 96% success rate. But I have that because I take very few clients in terms of if I don't have the space or bandwidth to work with you directly, I won't. And because we do full circle service where it's authenticated, not with just the foundational basics of admissions, it really is diving deep into who you are as a person. It becomes much more of a fulfilling process. So I always call it saying it's admissions and beyond, that when you come to work with me, it's admissions you might have walked in the door for, but we find a myriad of things that we can service that help you kind of the process and beyond. So it's the icing. So the end result is you get success into your school. But within it, you learn more about your limiting beliefs. You learn more about your triggers. You learn more about what drives your child. You learn more about what you value as a parent and what you don't value. You learn more about how to advocate, how to mediate maybe in your marriage or relationship. And all of those things ultimately impact your child. All of them do. So if I can support all of those things and a parent can walk away feeling whether I get in or don't get in, it really doesn't matter to me anymore, then I've won. Right?
Got it. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, but you're also working with not just the parents, you're working with the children too, right?
I am. Yes, I am.
And
Yeah.
did you want to share any experiences of any stories about you're helping the families getting in, and what else did you have in mind? We still have 4 minutes left.
Yeah, well, let me try to wrap it in. So yesterday, let me see. Okay. So yesterday we had a new little girl come in and little chatterbox, right? And I always love the chatterboxes. And totally confident, walked in the door, totally confident, shared tons of stuff, was even like cheeky when her dad walked in. I said, who's this? And I said, what do I call your parents? And she said, auntie and uncle. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, great. And we sat down for the assessment. And it was so interesting that how her body language could shift from that confidence to such an insecure frame when she didn't know something.
Aww.
And it was interesting because how prevalent that is, right? And how, if not knowing how to respond, how that can be anchored later on in life. And what was interesting, because I also do play therapy for children, so I know how to and what to do to monitor it. So you're doing it within a safe process. And when we were looking at just the patterns or the idea of a pattern, and she didn't know, her body sludged and her whole energy went down. And I was like, oh, it's interesting. I've been on this planet like for a very long time. And she's like, what number? And I'm like 46 years. And then she said, but and she's thinking. And she said, I'm 5. And I said, yeah, you're 5. She goes, your number is so much bigger than mine. I go, yeah. And you know what? Sometimes I don't know things still. And then she started to look up a little.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because to watch that shift and to say, you can actually just ask me, I don't mind helping. And to see her kind of look a little bit more like, oh, and her parents were close by enough to hear the context. And when we resume back to kind of do an overview a little bit more about who she is as an individual, because they were so misunderstanding to why they weren't accepted, because they saw her as that person that I saw originally, but not the person who wasn't able to achieve something. And when I sat with the parents and we had just a very, very quick conversation, because I know we're locked for time right now. And I talked to Dad, and Dad had said that prior to the conversation, he had said that he had went to the school when he wasn't accepted to try to meet with the director of admissions without invite. And the director of admissions was offended, and he felt very bad for doing that. And it was so reminiscent to the same body language, tone, and feeling that his daughter exhibited when she thought she didn't do something right. And I asked him about when he was a child, what happened when you didn't do something right? And he said that his parents would show a sense of disappointment, and he didn't want to do that. And I said, when your daughter doesn't do something right. And he said, well, it's hard because I don't really say anything, he said, but I try to give her more chances to do it. And I said, do you think that translates that has to be a better sometimes for her? And he said, I never looked at it that way. And I said, the same way that when you went into the school, your intention was to show up manly and say, I'm here. Thank you for our relationship.
Thank you.
I understand. And the perception from the other side was, we don't want to look like we're that friendly because it could look like there's some sort of like threat because we didn't invite you to come. And you took it as you did something bad.
Oh my gosh.
Forgetting what your purpose was. Your purpose and intention.
Yeah.
But you took it internally as bad. And it's the same way. This little girl showed up yesterday with the idea to rock it, to do her best. And something came out that wasn't what she knew. And her intention was to do her best. So she felt that sense of disappointment and owned it like it was hers. It's not hers. She's only been on the planet for 5 years, and someone hasn't taught her that yet. So
beautiful.
I leave it with that idea is that, remember, even as parents, there will be things that we still haven't been taught about parenting or being in the process of admissions or just walking through the milestones of our children's lives. But it's about finding resources and support that either focus in it or can align with you so that you can walk through it.
Got it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Paula Howell. How can we contact you?
So you can contact me through, again, www.howellacademics.com or Paula Howell at howellacademics.com, or directly just telephone on 778-628-0204.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for being here, for joining us again and inspiring us. Reach out and hopefully we'll connect again next week. Glad we got to do a Zoom.
I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, sweetheart. Same here. Bye-bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.